So we are on example number 3 of section 10.1, and we are going to find the amount financed, the total finance charge, and the APR. Okay, so the first two parts are pretty quick because all we have to do to get the amount financed is subtract 95, the down payment, from the purchase price, and you see that we get $4,100, right? Because that's it, subtract $95. So the amount financed is how much we're going to borrow. And so let's go ahead and put that down here because we're going to need that to figure out our annual percentage rate. Now, it also says total of monthly payments. So from that, we actually know that we paid this much on the loan. We're going to subtract $4,100, and that's going to give us our finance charge. So our total finance charge is $1,844. Now we don't really use that in our chart. What we do need though, we need a future value is 0. The number of payments is 60. Notice it says that right there. So remember, when you're putting this in, I would fill out the chart except the part you're going to compute, and then make sure that you put this on your calculator. Remember, you're going to put 60 on your screen and push in. You're going to put 4,100, 4100, no commas or anything, right? You're going to put 4100 on your calculator screen and push PV. If you accidentally push one of those keys, you could get the wrong thing in there, and so you can actually check that by pushing your recall. You'll see a recall down on the lower left. Recall in, if it says 60, you're good. Recall PV, it says 4100, you're good, right? You've got it in. Now, we can figure our payment, right? Because we know how much was financed, and we're going to divide that, or how much our total of the payments was, not finance. We financed 4,100, but we paid 5,944. So if you take that and divide it by 60, then you see that your payment is 99.06 repeating, right? So we're going to say 99.07, and that is our payment amount, 99.07. And remember, we have to put that in with a negative sign. You guys don't necessarily have to write dollar signs in your charts and everything. I just have a tendency to do that. And then sometimes I forget to do that. So anyway, so they gave us all the information we needed to figure out the interest rate, right? And that's what we're doing here. So once you got these numbers on here, don't forget when you type in 99.07, push your plus minus so that you put your negative up there, because it has to go in as a negative, because you have to tell the calculator you're paying payments. I'm paying in this $99.07 each month, and that's why we write it as a negative. You borrowed the 4,100 and you spent it, right? You got to spend that money, so that's why it's a positive. Now push compute IY, and here's what you will see on your screen: 1.309036,806. You're going to multiply that then times 12. Remember, that's just part we have to do, we know to do, and we find that our interest rate is 15.7%. All right. Because we computed that, I'm going to go ahead and write it with a percent. Okay, you don't necessarily always have to have the percent in your chart, but in this case we want it to be. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do a different calculation, and this time we're going to find the monthly payment. Notice over here I have compute payment, and so that's the part we compute this time. Now, on the IY, I left that kind of big and for a reason, but our interest rate isn't that big. This or doesn't have as many decimal places because, you guys, we had to round back on this previous problem back here. That is a rounded interest rate. Notice this 0.8743 da 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 da. Well, if you take 10.5 and divide it by 12, then you get 0.875. So do that. 10.5 divided by 12 equals, and then press your IY key, right? After you have that on your screen. So it has to say the 0.875 on your screen before you push your IY key. Okay. Now that we're on the same truck again, and we already know what the payment should be. We're gonna actually compute that payment and compare. And so it was 60 months at an interest rate of 10.5. The amount borrowed, remember, was right here, 9,045. Oh, 9,045. And future value is 0 because it's a loan. And so at the end, we don't want to owe any money, right? We want it to be 0. We are going to compute the payment. So once you have these entered, remember, type in 60, press N. We already talked about IY. Type in 9045, press PV. Type in a 0, press FV for future value. Remember, PV's present value. And now I want you to push compute payment. So the compute key, then the payment key. And this is what you should see on your screen. It's going to be a negative 194.41. Now on this right here, remember we had 194.38. Well, that's a 3-cent difference, and the difference is because of the interest rate. We have a rounded interest rate that when we computed it, it had this big long number. So there's going to be a little bit of difference sometimes when you are working with interest rates and this kind of thing. It can happen. And that's okay, right? It actually is okay. In this case, just a little bit of difference of 3 cents per month. Okay. Over the life of the loan, I guess that could make a decent amount of difference of about $1.80. So not a big deal, really. Okay. Next question. Troy wants to purchase new dive equipment for $55,000. At 6% for 60 months, what is his monthly payment? So we're just going to practice finding the monthly payment again. So let's fill out our chart, right? It's 60 months, 6%, and $55,000. All right, so 60 months. Remember, we put in your 60 and push N. Oh, clear your TVM keys. Remember, do second, clear TVM, which is on the present value, or sorry, the future value key. All right, do that before you start this problem. You want to clear out the loan stuff that you put in your calculator so it doesn't get confused and jumbled. Okay. All right, so for the interest rate, we take the 6%, we divide by 12. You don't have to put percents or anything, your calculator knows, and we get 0.5. So once you see this on your screen, press IY, okay? And then present value is $55,000. Future value is 0. All right, so get that all on your calculator. Remember to pause if you need to, because I'm not always going to stop and wait to try to keep the videos to a reasonable length. Okay, so now we compute payment, right? And that is going to be $1,063.30. So pretty big payment, but he borrowed $55,000, and 60 months is 5 years, right? So it's a short loan for that amount of money. Okay. So this one is about calculating the APR of a loan. And this loan had some loan fees. And so the reason that our interest rate is going to change when we calculate it is because of that. When you include the fees in the loan, then you're actually financing the fees, which really actually changes your interest rate. And so we're going to just look at that. Okay, this is a process, and you'll just want to refer back to this question if you come up on a problem like this. Okay. All right. So first, we have to compute the payment of the loan. Okay, so we're just going to use the information they've given us, right? We have a loan for $9,625. The loan fees are already in that number. It's 10% for 4 years. Okay, so this time we have to, for the N, we have to take 4 times 12, and so we're going to pay 48 payments. Remember, you're going to put in 48 and push N. Our interest rate is 10%, so we're going to take 10 divided by 12, and that is actually 0.83 repeating. Just leave that on your screen and press IY, right? So 10 divided by 12 equals, make sure you push the equals, and then push your IY key. We are borrowing $9,625. And our future value is 0. Okay, so then we're going to compute our payment. Remember to pause this because I'm going to just keep moving along. When you compute payment, you get $244.11. Okay, now that's our payment. We're going to use that on the next step. So let's write it here. 244.11, because now we're going to compute the interest rate without those loan fees. Let me get that right. We're going to take the 96.25 and subtract 150, and that's going to be our present value is 94.75. So we actually were purchasing something for 9,475, but we had to finance more because of the loan fee. All right, so 9,475 will be our present value. We're still going to be at 48 months and a 0 on future value. Okay, now we compute our IY. So that's going to be 0.902682021 times 12. And we push equals to see what is this interest rate and round it to the tenths place. Now notice our original interest rate was 10, but our actual interest rate is 10.8. If we include, if we're looking at, oh, if we had financed just this amount instead of the other, this is how that works out. Okay, so it is a process. You may not totally understand it, but it is a thing that you can work your way through and hopefully start to understand. Okay, so this is an add-on method, and I will just tell you the truth, I'm not that crazy about it because it seems like it's going to be just way more money than it should be, but we're going to do this. We're going to calculate the APR with the add-on method. Here's all the steps. First, we're going to calculate interest using the interest formula, which is I equals PRT. And so we take our loan amount, $12,250. We're going to multiply it by our interest rate, right? R is the interest rate and as a decimal. T is our time in years. And then we find that we're going to pay $4,410. Now this is simple interest, and that's not really the amount of interest you would pay because as your loan decreases, the amount of interest decreases. And so, you know, that's kind of how that goes. And then we add the 12,250 to get this total amount of 16,660. Now we're going to divide that. I'm going to pause this here in a minute and fill out the chart, and then we'll talk about it because I'm about to run out of time. So we're going to divide that by 48 to get our payment, 347.08. All right, so pause. Okay, so I don't want to get past 15 minutes because then it just makes it a pain on YouTube. As you can see, here's all your information. You can pause it here to kind of go through, but we end up with a pretty high interest rate because we put so much interest on there. But anyway, here's the chart all filled out. Please make note of that, and that's the end of this video.